So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology, iOS versus Android mid 2020. Now, what inspired this video is that yesterday was a big day for updates. I mean, we got iOS 13.5.1 over here for the iPhone, and we also got the June security patch for Android. And I just thought about how similar are these softwares here? Which one is the better pick here, middle of 2020, where software is really very important to our lives. A lot of us need our phones these days, so let's discuss the various elements of them. And so for this comparison, I'm using the Pixel 4 XL, which is most representative, I think, of the clean version of Android, the way it was intended here. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is just kind of navigating the OS. So essentially they are the same when it comes to the home screen, just swiping left and right. But what's very different is that you still have the ability to place icons wherever you want, of course, on the Android side, whereas with Apple, it kind of just flies up to the nearest, application you could see like that. Now, I will really hope that someday we can just bring it down. Now, don't come at me with that, oh, you could just jailbreak it, Nick. I don't want to jailbreak it. I want this stock. I want it the way it comes right out of the iPhone box. I want to be able to just kind of be able to at least bring the apps down if I want, so they don't have to sit up here if I don't have as many apps that will take up the whole second page, for example. So I do think Android still is quite nice there. Now, the Android OS navigating around still has the app drawer, which once you get used to it, you might actually like this a lot because everything's in alphabetical order. So it's pretty easy to kind of just think about, okay, if I want to go to YouTube, I'm gonna go all the way to the bottom because that starts with the letter Y. Whereas with the iPhone, you're just gonna type it up here in the universal search. But the Google phone also does have the universal search, which you could type right there. Or if you bring it back home, you could just do it right here from the bottom of the home screen. So that's pretty nice. Now, navigating the gesture system is also quite similar on both of these. With Android 10, the Google Pixel now has gestures and they're very smooth as well. And I think the main reason why it's just as smooth on the Pixel as the iPhone here is that the Pixel brought the 90 hertz hardware to this phone. Also, if you look across other phones like the Samsung Galaxy series or even the OnePlus series, because those phones have 120 hertz displays, even bigger than this refresh rate, the gestures on those phones are also quite smooth. Now, when it comes to getting to your recent apps, you do just hold up there on the Google, you hold up like that for the iPhone. And one thing that is very similar on both of these is kind of like the way you go through the application. So you'll swipe through to get to your second page and like that. Yeah, it's a little bit different looking, but it's pretty similar. The Google Pixel does have a clear all button. So if we go right there, we can just clear all the applications. Whereas with the iPhone, you could swipe 2 or 3 at a time. When it comes to the recent applications tray, I think it's a little bit easier to clear them on the Pixel if you like to clear your apps a lot. But when it comes to just their overall, performance, when it comes to the gestures, I gotta say that the iPhone still feels a little bit smoother sometimes, but that 90 hertz just made the Pixel very good as well. So they're pretty even when it comes to the gestures. Also in the Pixel, when we go to navigation, you can actually change it to, a 3-button navigation if you liked it how it used to be on Android. Also on Samsung devices, you also have different ways to navigate like this as well. You can even hide the gesture bar if you would like. And if we go into settings here, you can change the back sensitivity. And one thing I do like about the Pixel is that you can go back like this on either side of the screen and basically system-wide. Let me go over here. You see how I went back right there? So even on here on the right side, I can go back as well. Now with the iPhone, you actually have to perform a task before you're gonna go ahead and be able to go back. For example, if I'm on the web pages, I can swipe back like that. On iOS, I can also go forward like this in the web pages, but the Android device kind of does it on either side, no matter what you're doing. You just gotta swipe from those edges. So that's a really nice Android 10 feature. Some could say, well, they copied it from iOS because they already were doing that kind of from the left. And you could say that's true, but at the same time, both of these systems operate so similar in 2020. Next up is, of course, the customization is pretty much endless on the Pixel. You can change different launchers. So if we go to Play Store, you can download tons of different launchers and just really change up the entire experience of your Pixel device. You can make it a Microsoft launcher on here and just run it with the Microsoft launcher. So you can really just change it to your own liking. That's still a very strong case to use an Android phone, whereas with iOS, it still looks pretty similar that it looked 10 years ago with this software over here. Yeah, there's a lot of new features for 2020. And of course, with the notch and we have the gestures based system, that's a little bit different than, 10 years ago, but still the general overall iPhone experience hasn't changed, whereas you can really just switch it up. I do think that Android software has evolved a little bit faster than the iOS software, which has just kind of been refining over the years. So we do have Siri and Google Assistant. Now you could say, hey Siri to this phone, or you could say, okay Google to the Google Pixel over here. They're not going to activate right now. I turned them off for this video, but if you go ahead and hold down the home button or tap the Google Assistant here, you can talk to these assistants on the phone. So there's quite a bit they can do. Now, Assistant can do things like calculations, weather, setting alarms, setting calendars. Siri can do the same thing. What's 25 times 2?
It's 50.
What's 25 times 2? What is the capital of New York City?
I found this on the web.
What is the capital of New York City? And so you can see they both will bring up web results and stuff like that. So both of them are very good at search results, stuff like that. I do think Google is a little bit better with giving you specific answer to search queries, whereas Siri seems a little bit more enjoyable to use for things like setting an alarm, calendar, setting reminders, calendar events, stuff like that. But although the system will do that, the assistant seems more search-based, whereas this seems more personal assistant, but also includes some search-based stuff as well. Now, both of these do have very good dictation in 2020. So this is a test of the dictation feature on both the iOS phone and the Android phone. Both of them do respond pretty quickly and in real time. However, sometimes I do find that the Pixel keeps up with my voice a little bit faster than the iPhone, but both of them are still very, very good options for texting if you don't want to type out the message yourself. So you see, they both did very well. However, the Apple phone doesn't stop until you hit the keyboard. Whereas with the Google phone, it will stop, once you hit stop talking. You don't have to hit the mic. It will just stop once you stop talking. Really, both of them are very fantastic options for dictation in 2020. However, the Pixel does have a live caption feature, which across the OS, anytime you hear his voice, it can kind of try to transcribe it there so you can hear it no matter what. So both the iOS phone and Android devices do have support for Face Unlock in mid-2020, but Face ID or Touch ID is your option for iOS devices in 2020. You'll have to go with the iPhone SE if you want Touch ID, whereas you can get fingerprint. You could still use iris scanner if you get a secondhand Samsung phone, or even a new one that hasn't been used yet, but it's a couple years back, like a Note 9, for example. Except they both have shortcuts on their applications. However, the Google phone is a little bit quicker here to go ahead and bring that shortcut up, as Apple has this little delay due to the haptic press, no longer 3D touch. Certain applications I think have more shortcuts on the iPhone. For example, the camera, you can only take video, take selfie. Over here, you can do portrait, record video, take selfie. So I do think more applications do support the shortcuts on the iPhone. So if you like doing this little shortcut stuff, you probably will like the iPhone more. Now, when it comes to their control centers, both of them do have great control. However, I will state that it's easier to edit the Pixel device or the Android devices, as you can edit them right from their notification panel up there and just move applications around. Whereas with the iPhone, just like older days of iPhone, you have to do two steps. You have to go into your settings, and then you have to go to Control Center, customize controls, and then you can move around controls. Now, for some, this is not a big deal, but I think it'd be nice to have a little edit option right here within the Control Center over here. Both iOS and Android typically offer a battery saving mode. Again, this depends on whether you're with a Pixel Android, a Samsung Android, but most of them do have some type of battery saving option. So Android 10 does offer some digital well-being type features. See, it'll tell you your screen time, unlocks, all that stuff, how much time you've been spending on certain apps, whereas with the iPhone, you can look at your battery and kind of see what you've been using. You can also go over here into screen time, and it'll give you a more of a breakdown in terms of what you've been using on your phone. In terms of which one's laid out better, I think really it comes down to your own preferences here, but the Google version is still in beta, whereas the iPhone version is not in beta anymore. Both of them do have ways to manage and check out screen time and kind of what you've been doing on your phone all this time. Next up, they both do have great do not disturb functionality, where you can schedule out, on the iPhone when you want to go ahead and have do not disturb on. You can allow different calls. Over here on Android, They're both pretty similar in their do not disturb functionality. So there's great ways to block out them unnecessary interruptions that you don't want to have on your phone daily on both phones, both of them in depth there. So I don't think either one is better than the other in that area. Now, one area where I do think Android is better, specifically on the Pixel over here, is the spam feature. What I like about the Pixel is that it'll tell you specifically when somebody is spam calling you, whereas over here on the iPhone, it'll silence unknown callers. So we'll go to silence unknown callers and we'll be able to silence them. So spam is pretty well protected on both phones. However, the Google phone gives you a clear message like, yo, this person is spamming you. This is a spam number. You probably don't want to answer it. Really like that for the Android 10 over here. Next up, when it comes to their updates, they both do seem to get very good amounts of updates. Google's been updating this phone every single month, basically since it came out. Last one was just yesterday. I mean, this is the June 5th security patch. 13.5.1. Apple, as always, is already on 13.5.5 beta, whatever. They're always on the next version of the software. So Apple's still in the lead usually when it comes to at least letting everyone use the software, very fast, newer versions of the software, betas and stuff like that. Right now, though, I would say either phone you go with, definitely going to get nice amount of updates, especially if you want to go 5 years or so, you probably want to go with the iPhone, but the Pixel still hangs on quite long. You'll probably upgrade your phone anyway before you're out of updates. So iOS, at least on the newer iPhones, typically blocks the battery percentage. That's due to the notch. There seems to be no space, but I think Apple could put the battery percentage a little bit inside of the battery, or they can make the battery icon just a little bit smaller to squeeze in the battery percentage. Whereas over here on the Android device, you could see it right there. So battery percentage, you know, you can't really see it on the modern version of iPhone iOS over here, which you have to swipe down to see it, which is another process. So that's one area of most Android phones I really like, is that you can always see the battery percentage. I'm not going to cover cameras that much because the camera software really does depend on the phone you're with, because like the Pixel, for example, is mostly focused on photography, whereas the Samsung throws everything in the kitchen sink in the phone. And then you have some other phones like the OnePlus, which are kind of, you know, very clean, but also not overwhelming, but still a little bit more features going on than this Pixel right here, which is mostly focused on photography. So it really does change. But the fact of the matter is most Android software and iOS software have clean camera UIs that can really just snap and take good pictures with good focus and good video most of the time. One area where the Android device seems to still be ahead is always on display. Yes, it does increase your battery usage a little bit, but this is something I want to see with iOS 14. I know Apple can do this, especially on the OLED display. You can see the clock will always show. You don't have to turn on your phone every time you want to go ahead and get into the device. Now, next up is dark mode. So the dark theme is available here for the iPhone, and it's available here for the Google Pixel. Now, the Google Pixel is one of the best versions of the dark theme because it works in all the Google apps, which is a lot of what you probably use on your Android device. Even the Google search app, even the Gmail app, everything is darked out on the new version of dark theme for the Pixels. iPhone does have a great night shift mode as well as True Tone. True Tone or any feature like that is not really possible here on the Pixel, but you could just throw on night light, bring it down, and it kind of emulates kind of what True Tone does. Now over here, the bedtime mode also will make the Pixel black and white at a specific time. Just a beautiful experience on the eyeballs at night. So really, either one of them is not going to disappoint here. They're both excellent to use at nighttime. If you do decide to do that, it's not going to hurt your eyes. Next up is widgets. So with the Android device, it's hold down, grab a widget, put it wherever you want, as always. And they really pioneered this on phones. So, you know, I still think Android is ahead here. Whereas they kind of have a widgets tray here for the iPhone. Now this is pretty clean though, because it kind of stays off your screen. So I think from a cleanliness perspective, if you don't customize your Android phone to be clean looking, widgets can get messy if you're putting them all over the screen. But if you put them in the right spot and you kind of set it up to be clean, it can be just as clean as this. But it already is clean on the iPhone. So I still think the customization factor of the widgets is better on Android, but you still, at least you have an option for some type of widgets on the iPhone. And on to speed and performance. The 90 Hertz has really made a difference for Android devices, as well as the 120 Hertz display. They have surpassed iPhone when it comes to the hardware display being smoother. However, the iPhone software, without this 90 Hertz, I still think the iPhone software would feel a little bit smoother. So there's just a little bit more polish going on for this device over here in the iPhone. So really, I think this is why we're looking to see the 120 hertz on iOS. However, both of these, either phone you use, you're not going to feel a big difference. These phones, when I'm switching between them, they just feel so similar in terms of smooth, in terms of just polish, just very good. It's the best of the best of both platforms here. App support is very strong on both. However, I think if you're looking for more creative apps, I do think the iPhone still wins here. They have things like iMovie, Double Take, Filmic Pro. Filmic Pro is available on Android, but it's not quite as good for me. I actually had it crash a few times, and I actually had to get a refund on the Filmic Pro app here. So it's really going to be niche. Like, certain apps are going to be available for the Android, certain apps are going to be available for the iPhone. You know your apps best. You know what you want to play. You know what you want to use. If it has it, then if it has it on one platform, that's probably the platform you want to go to. If it doesn't, you probably don't want to go to that platform. When it comes to their level of security, again, we talked about the Face ID and the face unlock here for the Pixel, both being very secure. They both have passcode unlock. At the same time, you're probably wondering which is the more secure device. Well, they're both extremely secure because these are both titans in the tech industry right here. However, it really depends because Android is a really open source operating system. So it kind of depends on the hardware. Like, a Samsung phone is probably more secure than some cheap phone you find on eBay with a no-name brand, for example. So be careful with Android and getting someone who doesn't really update their phones, or a manufacturer doesn't really care too much about the phone past the sale of that device. Like, after it comes out, they're already forgetting about updating and stuff like that. But if you stay on the latest security patches, the Pixel's very secure. The iOS device has always been very secure. Again, it really comes down to the hardware you're using. But I would say, as long as you're not doing anything fishy on your phones, you should be pretty secure on both of them. In terms of privacy though, the Pixel does seem to get in your business a little bit more. Everything you're searching, it kind of is throwing ads at you. It's throwing things that you've been looking at in the Google app, but you can kind of set that up to not do that if you want. But I don't know if most people will do that. It does take some time to set it up where it's not really doing that. Whereas the iPhone seems a little bit more buttoned down when it comes to privacy, not really getting in your business too much. Again, there is some tracking features you got to turn off in the iPhone as well. It doesn't seem like it's following everything you're doing as much as the Pixel does, whereas you'll do a Google search and it'll be like telling you exactly what you were just searching. It's a little bit weird sometimes on the Android device, whereas with the iPhone, you don't see that too often. You'll just see your past history of Safari results, for example. Now, when it comes to typing and messaging on both phones, well, we have iMessage over here versus just the Google Messages application. This is still more like SMS on the Google platform, whereas with the iPhone, this is iMessage. Now, while they might look similar, you can actually read when people are actually typing to you. There's those little dots that come up, let you know someone's typing with you. Also, the emojis here. Which one does better here? Well, I think Google has come a long way from before. They got a lot of emojis on here. However, it's pretty hard to beat Apple's emoji system as they keep updating it over and over again. Every software that comes out every year seems to be giving more emojis. So I think Apple does adapt a little bit better to what people are craving in the emoji scene. But at the same time, both of them do have plenty to do some communication. You're not going to have any problems there. On the Google side, you do have gift search. You do have, different ways to communicate. You can find things in search. Again, very Google based over here. Whereas with the iPhone, on iMessage, you have all these applications. You can use stuff within the app itself. So I feel like the iPhone is much more like an online messenger, whereas the Google phone is more like a text messaging system with just a few good features in there. So really, iMessage is probably better here for that. When it comes to the keyboards, hey, this actually is nice. They finally brought swipe to the iPhone. This has always been here on Android, so definitely copied Android on that one, but that was a good copy because I've been wanting that. In terms of the typing experience, both of them are very good. The Google keyboard seems about on par with the iOS keyboard in my experience, but some other skins and manufacturers don't quite seem on par there. So at the end of the day, I would just pick the Google phone if you want to use all the G Suite of services. Any Android device, if you want to use the G Suite of services. If you also, it's not really about, cheap anymore because they do have cheaper iPhones now. So, you could say that the iPhone was the more premium device. Not these days. You can buy a premium Android or a cheap Android. Of course, you could still get a cheaper Android with more features than an iPhone, but there's still ways to get a really good iPhone experience for cheap if you want to. If you want to customize, you probably don't want the iPhone. If you want nice applications, smooth performance, and good updates support, you're going to want the iPhone in mid-2020. But one thing about the iPhone is that it can, even though they're a little bit slower, it can run the whole Google suite of applications. Now with the Samsung phone, you usually get the Samsung apps and you get the Google apps, but you can also download a lot of the Samsung apps right here on any Android phone. So let's just put Samsung, for example, and you'll see a lot of Samsung applications like their browser, their health, their members app. You'll get a lot of Samsung apps right here on any Android. Which one would I pick 2020? If you're wondering, well, I don't like to be limited or restricted by either, so I use both of them. But which one do you find to be the better operating system in 2020, or do you find them totally equal? It's just down to preference. Let me know your thought. And if you stick with one of them, what are the reasons why you stuck with Android this long or iOS this long? I really want to know, because I think at this point they're so similar, they're pretty much so equal that at this point you can't go wrong either way. So thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Stay safe, stay well. Nick here, and peace.